What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in today. Today is another special day. We're here at MagnaFlow Exhaust Systems in Oceanside, California. We're going to do a walkthrough of the facilities, and I don't know, we'll see what else. So make sure to hit the subscribe and the thumbs up, and let's go inside.
With us here, we pretty much store a lot of his vehicles that we have in our facility to kind of just demonstrate the diversity that he has, ranging from classic restorations, you know, the family, the way he kind of dealt with his dad's car. The 20% of our business is the performance side. So what you see here today is a product of something that's much bigger than just building mufflers and exhaust. Each one of these are all our SEMA booth elements.
Yeah, it makes you want to work here. You're not enclosed where like typical office spaces or companies have, you know.
Boxed in cubicles.
Yeah, exactly.
Now this is our primary shipping. And from here you can see UPS, FedEx, you name it, all of it sources. We keep about, you know, depending upon the cycle run, between $12 and $16 million worth of active inventory. Kind of like walking underneath the log ride over at like Disneyland. Visually scanned, so all the barcodes verify the it's going to be whatever's empty. They put something in here, they scan it, and then our system, you'll see guys with, you know, the scanners or like a little wristwatch kind of thing, and it'll basically tell them where that product is in this whole thing, what floor, and of course which place is closest to pick. Have to come up, we can add a second shift. But really, with shipping, this is the important part that we've always come across, is by 2 o'clock you have to be done nationwide. We're on the West Coast. So at 2 o'clock, nothing else is getting there the next day if it hasn't already shipped yet. So that's a big part of all of our processing and planning. But definitely, as you see, white boxes don't stay white very long, but there's not enough time for the dust to collect for them to go. But being that we're a Southern California, made in USA company, manufactured here, we do have to go all the way up to the ceilings here at 45 feet and maximize every square inch so that we can justify the space, because that's the most expensive thing we really have here in California is building size and, you know, footprint.
So the materials come from overseas?
Nope, most of our stuff is all here in the US.
Yeah?
Yeah. We're a made in USA company because 70% of the materials that we have, that we acquire, and the value of the materials are acquired and manufactured here in the States. Finish and get the ultimate finished product here. Starting off with the basic raw materials, which is the brick or the catalytic converter substrate. Basically takes 2 electrodes and the material in the middle creates resistance, and that creates heat. So it actually creates a seam weld down the side of the cap to make sure that there's no leakage down the side. We have a fixture that expands the tubing to make sure there's a nice tight mechanical lock before we weld it. Anytime you have a gap, there's an opportunity for a weld to leak and air to get in. And these are catalytic converters on modern cars. If an O2 sensor picks up a leak, it thinks it's running leaner and takes the engine not compensate. Additionally, a leak will also mean that the cat in the rear might show a cat inefficiency code. If it's a rear cat going, okay, well, we're getting air in, so we're not seeing as much of that being converted out, so the cat does something wrong, so it's going to throw a wrong code even when the car is perfectly fine. So before it goes in a box, every product is pressure tested to make sure there's no leaks. And here, we're going to have what the equivalent is in what's called a spun body. So now, instead of having to weld the material on there, we're forcing it down in shape. We can change the diameter, but there's no welding on the side. There's no leak testing because there's no welding on the side. The amount of energy, if you look at Google, we have solar across this whole building. Our electric bills are in the $20,000 to $30,000 a month to run all the welders. There's no welding here, so we've saved a considerable amount of energy. And also, if you look, it's all been put up into the front and developing robots that work together to take the 3 elements, which you have. It's just a piece of tubes where it starts. It's been seam welded, which we do on the machine behind you here. And what you'll see here is the operator loads the shell. They put the brick up here. The robot handles the brick to make sure it's inserted the proper depth. Once this is taken out, it moves to the very back, and there's a spinning machine. Once it's running, it'll basically take the dimensional material down by working it down. We have one that you can see afloat. capable of. So the size and orientation is just based upon the programming, and then it feeds it backwards and then rolls the other half. So loading the two it just formed, gonna clamp them in, clamps them in, retracts the loading arm, top arm pulls up, and then the laser comes by. The laser's gonna start from your right, move to the left. First one done, second one. A very consistent heat mark, and you can see I can wipe it. That's just the dusting from the laser melting the material, but a very even and smooth weld. So when we go to form it, if we're going to shape it, it doesn't have a hard spot that's going to create that. And the material itself doesn't require an overlap on the welding because it's very controlled heat. It's not going to cause a point where it'll crack or fracture. In our first stage, it goes on the perforation, is a coarse stainless wrap. That goes over the perforated tubing you see here. The perforated tubing is created by our perf machine. Where the holes are placed is different on that tube than this tube. We're able to control what's called the density. So if we want more holes to create a different sound, we don't just have to change the body. We can actually do that with the perforation core. If the inlet of the tube, we don't want as much sound suppression, we want more noise, we can make it so the internal has perforation only partway through it. So while the muffler might look the same on the outside as one of our universals, all of our universals are the same pattern all the time. When we tune our direct fit kits that are made for a specific application, we might have our X-Mod series, our Street series, our competition. They might look like they have the same muffler, but internally they can be very different. That's how we tune the car for each one of those products. And then when it goes in to be packing, we're going to be using the basalt which goes around it. But to kind of show you the process and the consistency that's met, each of these products is basically put into a fixture, and our operator will basically prep the fixture for each one. The robot will conduct the welding. So what you see here in the product is the robot basically putting all the sub-assemblies together. So our operator will basically create the sub-assembly here, lock it into the fixture, and the fixture is kept inside. You'll see here in a second when he cycles it. It'll come down, he'll remove the other one. But the fixture is able to be rotated 180 degrees, so you can weld down. If you're into welding, you always know that gravity has an effect on where the bead goes. So if we're having to go up and down, it changes that. Here we get very even performance from the welder because it can rotate around the fixture. As the name implies, it's actually like lava rock that's been brought up to a high temperature and spun in a centrifuge, so we get a fibrous material. That fibrous material is not like fiberglass. It doesn't get in your skin. And the funny part is you can feel this in your hand. It's actually, if you pulverize it, it'll break it down to it's almost like a rocky form, and it's not going to, one, degrade. It can come apart, but it's still just rock material. So even if it falls apart, it's still absorbing energy, which is the movement. But it's not something that's, one, harmful to your lungs or your fingers. This machine is pretty interesting too because it actually cuts them into like sandwich wafers. The tube goes on ski at the top of it, one sheet on the top. The top comes down to form it, and then it's rammed inside, so you get consistent wrap around. You get the same amount in every muffler, so you don't have to worry about one muffler that you buy and the second muffler ever having two different packing densities. That just keeps the performance of the muffler up. He's going to take the sheets here, load one half, sandwich the bottom, put the top half in, and the ram will push through, and you'll see it pop out the other side, and then it's ready to put the caps on. These robots basically handle each of the welding processes. So there's 3 robots with 2 welders on either side, and you'll see as it feeds the robot, each one gets placed inside. It'll start the welding process. The one right in front of you there will be a second. It's going to change that one out right now. That's a finished one. Now I'll put it on the rack on the right. There goes the new one that needs to be welded. And you'll see the welding process start now. Cooling phase right now. But as a MIG welder, you can definitely see the pattern is very consistent. The heat doesn't change. It means it's a very good high penetration weld that's not going to create a spot where you can get a crack. Unlike other ones that are welded at the edge, we have the material inside 1/4 of an inch and it wraps around. So we're actually bonding to the middle of the material, not the edge. So we're not hardening the edge, we're not creating a potential for crack. It's going to put more material at the end where the muffler might get exposed to a speed bump or cracking. It just makes a more heavy duty product. So that's a stop it's putting right now, so he loads the brick the same way so it doesn't hit the ceramic when it's forming it. And then stop retracts, clamps it down, and then we go the spinning process. And every pass is moving about 1/8 of an inch or a little more. And it just steps it down to create the angle. We have our lock-in fixture. We'll have a tubing put into the program. He'll have the program executed by the vendor. He's going to cut the pipe. All of this is done with a lot of operator usage here. He's going to have to integrate with, tube cutting, cut it itself, put it and load it. It actually starts by loading itself. So it's got all the big 20-foot tubes at the end there. It'll load itself. It'll cut the tubing length it needs. And then one of two things. If it's done, it'll load it in here and we'll have the bent profile that'll get attached to the other part. If it's not done, it'll load it to the second cell, and the other robot we're really working on this right now, the other robot will grab the product and we'll load it so that we can end form it. So the more steps we can do, the less time we waste. So think about it like this. If we had a cat, or a muffler that we had, that goes in a box and has to wait till the tubing gets done. The tubing gets formed here, and if it needs to have something swedged to open it or flare, it needs to go in a basket. We have to inventory it, tell the computer where it's at, and then assign it to a person. They got to finish it, assign it back to that inventory shelf. So forklift travel, an assignment by an engineer. Now, if we can simply take the pipe and do the process and send it to welding, we eliminate the storage space, we eliminate the need for the inventory. We just get a more streamlined product and we can pass those savings down to the end consumer. We have an operator that can move to each cell. His job is literally just to load the product. And as you'll see here, the robot will do the work behind while he's loading the front side. And he'll take those sub-assemblies, re-inventory those, and we'll keep adding different stages of products so we get a finished product all the way through. So here we have a Y pipe being made. Here we have a flange and a piece of tubing that's going to go on the end of a muffler or a cat. And then we'll bring the next fixture in and we'll align those. But each of these phases is basically where most of our welding takes place. And we do some Cnc Plasma Cutting here. And this is the funny part, we only have 10 stations that are active right now where we have welders welding. That's how efficient the system has become, where there's still, again, there's places for our welders because sometimes it's a bent piece of tube, there's only one little 1-inch weld to hold a hanger in. It just doesn't make sense to program a robot to it. The human element can do it quicker, faster, and get it in the box and have the same reliability. So in some of these cases where we're looking at, again, a 1/2-inch weld, it makes sense it comes here. The rotary weld you can see is done out in the fixture, and that's done by the robot, and then they come in to weld this element in here, and that's a quick thing where someone can actually do that and do it as a person and put it in line faster than a robot can set up. What you have to do is making sure that no matter who ships it, how good or how bad, we want the product to be good for the consumer the way they expected it when they open the box. You have to package it, and you'll see all the preventative parts so we don't get scratches, we don't get dents. And then we lay a piece of plastic over it and we spray the two pieces of the foam in and it fills the box. So now there's no movement, and we all know that's what happens when you have that hanger that's sitting there and it gets dropped from 6 inches, then it has enough 6 inches of velocity to poke through. We fill foam it so we don't have that issue. Weigh in at, that's 4,000 pounds of material that's there. We have to use these big cranes to bring it all in. Muffler bodies, cat bodies. We stamp all the products here so you saw this in production. This is the die, we make our own dies. So we'll form that product with this die. 2-stage die, draws the material, forms the material, and trims the edges. So these hangers that you see here all have to be fabricated, bend out radiuses and angles, so there's that same hanger before it gets welded on the pipe. But we actually create the knurl, so it goes into the front end former and creates the shape, and then it'll bend the angle. But the accuracy here, you're looking at full CNC, so all computer numeric controlled stuff. When you lay over the parts, you'll find that they have the same bend angles every single time. You can see coming back, but this is where we process all the things for warranty, outbound. We also have some surplus storage here, both aesthetics and looks. You know, before we go out and make a billet tip, we can print it out here, see how it fits, see what the look is, see what it's like before we go down that path. So on the initial part of all of our R&D, this is where it kind of starts. The newest vehicles, obviously the brand new Toyota Tundra. We'll bring the vehicle in and we'll do a full body scan as well as a part scan. So what you can see over here is we're using Atos 3D scanning technologies that they've created. It's a blue light scanner. This one is set up to read the underside of the vehicle, so we can go underside, piggyback it, and see what the car looks like. And then we can take the parts off the vehicle, put them on the turntable. The little dots here will allow us to rotate it and see different sides, and then scan the product. This allows us to let the vehicle go and continue developing without the vehicle being here from a fitment standpoint, at which point in time, once we develop the prototype, we'll 3D print a fixture, make the part in the fixture, and then bring the car back and we'll test multiple mufflers, different cats, to see how it physically performs on the dynos, both the emissions dyno and the performance dyno. But we do all kinds of testing here. You know, we'll get people that use wrap on things. This is a high performance application with the V8, and you can see they're wrapping stuff. There's too much heat energy, so we're going to try to see what we can do to change that. But we can do testing like this too. We're working on a valve right now and checking heating cycles, so we can check what the temperature is that they fail at, how many cycles can we get out of things. But all of that kind of testing is done in this environment. And this is kind of called our 3D metrology room. Metrology is just a study of numbers, because everything we do here is about creating digital numbers to represent physical things and analyzing how it fits and forms together. Of exhaust development. This is where you pull it off, play with it, build fixtures. Again, you're going to see another TRD here. We're always going to test every variant. That's the long bed version of the crew cab. This is the shorter bed of the crew cab, and different engine configurations, so we have to see how they all sound and perform, because we don't just sell the part that fits, we sell a certain character of sound. So what we're using in them to determine what sounds good. And then obviously, depending upon the product line, this has a product that is currently used in our truck line, and it has a Helmholtz Chamber. This helps tune out drone. So we have this traditional straight through flow, and then we have a dead end pipe here that has a tuned frequency that it helps eliminate drone while you're cruising.
But does that affect the performance?
No, that's the best part. Because the primary pathway is straight through, there's zero impact on back pressure on this. All it's doing is we're creating a sound pressure wave. Basically, as you can imagine, as the pulse comes through here, it expands in all directions. The velocity and vector will continue up the tailpipe. It's the path of least resistance. But that pulse will come through. The chamber is designed around creating a different sound. We're trying to cancel the sound of the drone, but what we're doing is reflecting it, so we have to make the sound and then reflect it back at itself to cancel it. So here we go into the Helmholtz chamber, we expand the gases to create the resonant frequency, and then we send that frequency back in here. It collides the sound to reduce the sound, but it doesn't affect the actual flow-through performance. So we still get the 3-inch straight-through performance of that tubing, but we're able to get rid of that unwanted drone when you're cruising. A lot of technologies that the OEMs are putting into them to really try to get the most out of the vehicle performance-wise. But to be honest, that's the one thing you always see is guys always say that the 3.5 Turbo Raptor doesn't have a good sound. Ford really listened to that and created a unique muffler. These two valves that are able to change the sound based upon the selection level and still perform in the event that there's a failure. You'll see things like this, these little screens to make sure rocks don't get in there to block them. A little more technology. Anytime you put moving devices on an exhaust system, you've got to worry about rocks and stuff while blocking it. But then they also have a bypass tube, so when these are closed, it has a quiet mode that runs through a much smaller diameter, forces more pressure, but when you want the performance, it can bypass and open up to get around it. Still need an X pipe for balancing. It's pretty cool how much technology they've put into a very small package to try to make something that just sounds good, because it's rated at the same power. It's not improving power at all. This is all done because consumers said, hey, I got this thing that should have a monstrous V8 sound, and it's got this kind of wimpy V6 that they didn't spend a lot of time tuning. So in this generation of Raptor, Ford really put their engineers to the task of saying, how do we make the V6 sound the best it can? And this was kind of the end result. So we have our all-wheel drive dyno here. We do all of our testing. It's capable of running 2-wheel drive, all-wheel drive. We can run any number of vehicles with different wheel wheelbases. And it's also a load control device, so we're always more curious about repeatability. Today, OEMs are doing a great job of making good exhaust, but we want to make sure that what we get is repeatable. And there's a lot of dynos out there that don't use real-world numbers to simulate. They just do it before and after. But you know, you let the car cool down, you get a nice after. You don't run engine load on it, so you're running free spinning at 110 miles an hour. There's very little that you have to worry about because these drums have a lot of inertia. So this actually is able to electronically create load, so we can simulate wind force, wind resistance. You take a big pickup truck like that Toyota with the flat front, and you compare it to a Corvette. They will dyno differently in a load control than versus one without load control. So this just gives us the most real-world repeatable numbers. We'd rather report, single-digit performance gains if that's the real world, than tell somebody they're going to get double-digit and realize that when they take it home and try to dyno it themselves, they get less than what they want. However, it's going to be a 5-gas analyzer instead of a 3-gas analyzer, and it does very similar things. So again, not the high-performance car you would expect to find. This room is thermostatically controlled, so I have to make sure to open the door too long.
Man, oh man, oh man. It's crazy to, hopefully I caught enough so kind of give you an idea of what MagnaFlow does and what type of company they are. It is very overwhelming. It's not just a cut and weld and tube bending company that I envisioned. It's a whole process from science to sounds to performance to dynos to emissions to catalytic converters to different chambers for sounds of the muffler. It was very cool to had an opportunity to experience that, and Rich giving me a tour of the facilities. Man, oh man, that was cool. That was real cool. So I appreciate you guys watching. We got some stuff in the works with MagnaFlow, so that's why I'm showing you guys the tour. Looking forward to doing some stuff with them, and yeah, make sure to just know that they're still overwhelmed, but they're an American-based company, so that means a lot. And if you're from the era of my years, an American-based company and manufacturing company in the U.S. is very important. So I think with that being said, that's the kind of companies you want to support more. Nothing wrong with other brands and manufacturers overseas, but when it's U.S. made, you want to support your local companies. So go ahead and follow them on Instagram, YouTube, and other social media below. And if you're even thinking about purchasing an exhaust, give them a look on the website. And yeah, that was real cool. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Keep you guys more updated on some stuff we're going to be working on. And yeah, man, really cool. Subscribe. All we can do is keep going up. So catch you guys on the next video.